Welcome once again to Calaveras Living. You know, seems like on this program, and I enjoy doing it all the time, I've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years, we try to frequently talk about fire safety because the idea of how fires can crop up, whether it's in the home, whether it's out on the range, whether it's camping, whatever it is, you can't talk about fire prevention and fire safety too frequently, and we have exactly the right person to talk about it today, Nancy Longmore, who's a fire prevention specialist with Cal Fire. Nancy, it's good to see you again.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
And actually, there really isn't any fire season anymore, is there? I mean, they have one that they designate, but fires all year round could be.
It pretty much is everywhere in somewhere in California there's going to be fire season, and this winter we really didn't get out of fire season.
Yeah.
It just kept going right along.
Of course, now the weather's starting to warm up, so we can, well, not look forward, but we can be cautious about what's in store for us this year.
Absolutely, and with coming on the heels of the third driest, or the third of 3 extremely dry winters.
Oh, yes.
And a record-setting dry winter, we're maybe in for a busy fire season.
Now, with the drier winter, I mean, there hasn't been as much growth, right? But still, things are, because they're drier, they're more combustible.
That's right.
Okay.
I think we had enough rain to get a fairly good grass crop, but not enough to get the trees and brush adequately rehydrated, so they are really stressed and suffering from moisture.
Now, what's in your position as a fire prevention specialist? You go out and give talks and talk to a lot of different groups, right?
Right, yes.
What's the question they most ask, or what are they concerned most about with fire safety?
I think most people are most concerned about their neighbors that don't do any clearance. That seems to be the question I hear the most often. What can I do about my neighbor's property?
Okay.
Either it's a yard that's not cleaned up or it's a vacant lot that's a big hazard to folks in the community.
Yeah, because once something close to you burns, then you get the embers, and then your place is liable to go up too.
That's right. And the embers are one of the biggest hazards to our homes.
Yeah, I guess people don't understand how long they stay hot and how far they travel.
That's right. Embers can travel up to a mile ahead of a fire and accumulate up against a house. They can accumulate on roofs and gutters. Any little nooks and crannies where raindrops or snowflakes land, embers are going to land there. Yeah. And if you haven't cleaned those little nooks and crannies, they're going to be catching the sparks and embers and starting fires right there in your house.
Wow. Where did the whole term defensible space, has it been around for years? Even though my dad used to be in the forestry, I don't recall as a kid hearing that, but since we moved to this area 8 or 9 years ago, I hear it often. Is that a new term?
It's been around actually since the 1960s. I think it was the Bel Air fire in 1961 that really started the whole defensible space movement. I learned some interesting statistics today, which I don't have entirely off the top of my head, but during the Bel Air fire in 1961, homes that had at least 30 feet of clearance around them, something like 85% of them survived that fire.
Oh, wow.
But
that's only 30 feet.
Yeah, and that was only 30 feet. And homes that had no defensible space
were gone.
Were gone. Yeah. But since the bad fires of the early 2000s down in Southern California, they've figured out that 30 feet of clearance is not enough. And so they've gone to enforcing the 100 feet of clearance around homes.
Could you maybe give us a definition of defensible space?
Well, defensible space technically is that area around a home where vegetation has been thinned or removed that can give firefighters a safe place to work in the event that there is time to do structure protection, and that will ideally either slow or stop the progress of fire towards a structure.
Okay. I think most people would think only in terms of their own property. They don't think of the safety of the firefighters. Not
only firefighters, but the entire community. Yeah. Because what happens on one property is definitely going to have an impact on adjoining properties. So.
Now, and is it the law actually 100 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what happens to people who don't follow the law?
They put themselves, their neighbors, firefighters at risk, but they can also receive a citation for failing to clear their property.
Okay, a citation that costs them money?
Much money, yes.
Okay.
There's 4 or 5 common violations, and each one of those violations could be cited for a cost of over $400 per violation.
Oh, wow. So it could really add up.
Yeah, and we try first to get people to comply, to bring their property into a fire-safe condition. That's much more desirable than going out and writing tickets to everybody.
Yeah.
The goal is to get people to do their defensible space and to make their homes fire-safe.
Okay. Do you have enough personnel to, I mean, how can you cover the wide areas you have to cover?
Well, it's a little difficult.
Or do people report other people, maybe?
People call quite frequently and say,
hey, my neighbor's letting
my
in.
neighbor's, what can you do about my neighbor?
Okay.
And if it's a property that's got a house on it or some other structure, then I, as a CAL FIRE person, can come in and do an inspection and ask the people nicely to clean up, and hopefully they will. And if they don't, then they can get a citation.
So that's part of your job?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find most people good to deal with?
Most people are good. There's a few bad apples, but most people, when they understand why these things are important, and it's not just to keep the fire department happy, most people are willing to do what needs to be done.
Okay. What do most people, or not most people, some people just give excuses? Yeah, I love the trees around close to the house, or I love the shade, or they have reasons why they don't want to spend the money?
Some people just don't want to spend the money. Other people have genuinely legitimate reasons why they can't do their clearance work. They may be really old, they may be in fragile health, they may have other extenuating circumstances, and we try to work with that. But almost everybody has some kind of an excuse. Well, I have to go to France or Spain for the next 3 weeks, and can I do it when I come back? It's like, well, this has to be done every year. It needs to be done now.
Well, also second homes, people could maybe not even live there a good part of the year, and they just kind of let their property go, or be unattended.
Yeah, and that's a big problem, getting buy-in from the absentee homeowners, because a lot of them come up here, they buy pieces of property up here in the mountains, and it's their little piece of heaven. And every tree that grows in the forest was personally planted by God and needs to grow there.
That's right.
But that has led to our overgrown forests. That contributes to the overgrowth in our forests.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing about clearing forests, burning certain areas so it won't be so dense.
Yeah, and when you consider that the Native Americans used to set fires, before we came along and built our permanent houses and homes and communities out in the woods, they would use fire as a tool to keep the forest clean and free of this overgrowth of vegetation. And now everybody looks at the overgrown forest, many people look at the overgrown forest and think that's natural, and that's the way it should be, but it's not natural at all. It's like the forest in a state of cancerous overgrowth.
So what are some other considerations that maybe we haven't talked about on defensible space? I mean, you could be fined, you could be cited, you could pay money, you could endanger firefighters, your neighbors. What other things should people consider? Anything we've missed?
Well, if they do get cited and fined, they still have to clean up their properties, because then they can get cited and fined again, and the fines keep going up. But the most important thing is to please be a good community member, a good neighbor, and do that cleanup, because you're putting other people at risk when you don't.
Yeah. And also, would you recommend that neighbors report neighbors? Because it's just a logical and reasonable thing to do? If
they're at risk, that's definitely a good thing to do.
Yeah, because there's I mean, how many Nancy Longmores are there?
One.
One, so you can't be everywhere.
I cannot, no. So it really is. It's kind of like, sometimes I feel like it's trying to get, it's frustrating sometimes. Like trying to get kids to clean up their room when they don't want to.
Yeah.
But in this instance, it's really essential for the safety of the entire community that every person do their part.
Well, I guess it's even more important now with summer coming too. I mean, you had the
Yes.
winter growth, whatever there was of it
Yes.
in any particular area, and now it's getting warmer and fires are going to happen.
Yeah, and this year we are way ahead of schedule. We've got stations staffed and open and ready to go that aren't usually staffed until June.
Oh, just in anticipation
Just
of
in
problems.
anticipation, because we've been having fires all along, and even as we speak, there's one going down in Southern California. So
Yeah, in
that
fact,
was
I
a
talked
pretty
with my
good
son
sign.
who lives down there, and
Yeah.
he said it's only about maybe 15 miles from
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So it's going to be a rough fire season.
Now, what other fire prevention areas do you get into in your work?
I do a lot of education, Smoky Bear programs to just about all the elementary schools in Tuolumne and Calaveras counties. We've got education programs at both county fairs, Tuolumne and Calaveras, and the home and garden shows we'd like to participate in, just community events, and primarily my focus is education, and
Okay.
it seems to morph mostly into fire prevention, or defensible space.
Defensible space, okay. So, but most of your education is with younger people to get them aware of that, or is it with with
It
adults?
varies, you know, all age groups. We start out with fire and match safety for the little kids, and then I tend find myself just constantly focusing on defensible space for the grown-ups.
What do you tell adults about protecting the inside of their home? I mean, do you get into that, or you're more into forest fires?
I tend to do more on the outside, but there's a lot of things that adults can do on the inside, especially not smoking in bed, being careful with smoking materials when they're in bed, and do not leave matches, lighters, that kind of thing out where kids can get access to them. Yes.
Wow.
And just be careful while cooking. Be aware of cooking fires, and have a cover to put over pans when in case of the
Seems to
cooking
me
fire.
when I talk to people, or even think about myself, and I should know more about it, but they don't know what extinguishers to use for what types of fires.
That's something that you need to have a fire extinguisher that's specific to that purpose.
I mean, if it's a grease fire, if it's a wood fire, if it's you
Yes.
need to know
Yes.
what that fire extinguisher will do.
Yes, and that would be, you definitely read your manufacturer's information that comes with each fire extinguisher so that you'll have the proper fire extinguisher at the proper place.
That isn't outdated, too.
That's not outdated. They have to be regularly checked, or you have to, check the expiration date on them and just make sure that they're up to date and functioning, and the proper one for the proper fire.
There are even smoke alarms, too, that people, some are electrical, some are battery operated.
Yes.
And people don't check those regularly, the battery ones.
You should check the battery ones, even if they're built into your electrical system. They should have a battery backup, and you want to check those batteries once a month, and then replace them every 6 months. Generally, we recommend when we turn the clocks backwards or forwards. That's when you should replace the
For daylight
batteries in
saving,
your smoke alarm.
That's a good hint for people to at least have that in their minds.
Yeah, and be aware that a lot of people that are hard of hearing, seniors, for example, or even small children, may not hear those alarms if they're going off in the middle of the night. I know of folks that have slept right through a smoke alarm going off full blast. Children are notorious for sleeping through smoke alarms. And you may want to get some kind of a backup system that's got a flashing light that will, it's impossible to see through those strobe lights or whatever they are that.
It's like they used to have in the dance halls.
Yes, only they're
when they're doing disco dancing.
Yeah, when they're going off, they're
blinding.
Yeah, you can't sleep through those things. And then have 2 ways out of every room, and make sure
Excuse me?
2 ways out of every room,
okay.
and make sure your children know those 2 ways out. And one of the most important things is have a meeting place outside your house, preferably, maybe at a neighbor's home, where if you'd gone to the store, for instance, and left your young children home, something happens, God forbid, but there's a fire, they need to get out, you need to be able to come home and see those children right there at that meeting place, instead of one kid jumping out of a window, somebody else going out the back door, somebody going out the front door, and then you coming home and not seeing everybody at that meeting place. You need to have a family meeting place where you can immediately count heads and make sure
a clearly designated spot.
Yes, a clearly designated spot, and then practice having a fire drill every so often. Such as when the kids have a fire drill at home or at school, have them come home and you have a family fire drill so that it's just automatic.
Yeah, kids are used to fire drills at schools, and I don't recall ever having a fire drill at home.
I didn't either.
And my dad was in the forestry.
Yeah.
But that's such a good idea.
Yeah, you know, and I've heard of parents coming home to the house on fire and not seeing the child where they were supposed to be, and then trying to get back into the house, and they could have died as a result.
Oh, that's bad.
So, yeah.
Are there a lot of structure fires in this area, you know, like Calaveras County and Amador and Tuolumne?
I don't have the figures off the top of my head, but there are a number of structure fires every year.
Okay.
From various sources or causes such as electrical. Chimney fires are a big hazard. As soon as the weather cools down in the fall, we start getting flue fires.
Yeah, people should have their chimneys cleared out. Yeah.
And if you bank or damp your fire down at night, and so you're just keeping the wood in there, kind of smoldering but staying warm, that tends to accumulate a lot of creosote on the chimney, which becomes built up and becomes very flammable.
Yeah.
And that's what contributes mostly to the chimney fires.
And that just continues to collect in the chimney, right? And as you say, the less of the airspace going out, the more flammable it is.
Right. And so you may need to clean your chimney more than one time a year.
Yeah.
I've got to clean mine about 3 times a year because I damp it down and
you follow your own rules.
I try to.
Okay. Now, what kind of questions do little kids ask, you know, when you're out giving talks?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I know you probably had hundreds of, but there's no common one. But I mean, are they just curious, or are they really paying attention?
Kids do pay attention. It's amazing how much soaks in. But a lot of times, kids will think that, and even the little bitty ones, they'll say, "Oh no, we could play with matches. If I started a fire, I could put it out." And it's hard getting across to them that how quickly fire can spread. You know, the little guys, they really want to be the heroes. Well, I'll go grab a hose and I'll put that fire out. It's like, don't you dare. You need to, you know, if there's a fire inside your house, first thing you need to do is get out. Well, can I go back and get my puppy or my kitty or whatever?
Yeah, whatever.
It's like, you need to get out. We can replace.
I don't think they realize how quickly clothes can catch on fire, too.
Yeah. And so we also try to teach them actively, get them down on the floor, practicing things such as stop, drop, and roll.
Yeah.
And, you know, because you can go through the hand motions of stop, drop, roll, but when it comes to actually doing it, kids don't know how until you get them down on the ground and you're showing them.
Do they understand the whole implication of a fire can't burn without the oxygen?
I don't know if that really sinks in or not. We tell them that, but I don't know if it really sinks in. It's hard to tell sometimes.
Yeah.
But we did have one instance. We had some kindergartners practicing stop, drop, and roll. That weekend, some of them went out camping with their families, and one little girl tripped and fell face down into the campfire.
Oh.
And because she had just learned stop, drop, and roll, and she had actually practiced it, she rolled out of that campfire and kept rolling, and her little friends helped her to roll, and they even picked up handfuls of dirt and patted it on her clothes where they were still burning.
Oh, wow. And she was all right.
And she was all right. She's got just a couple little teeny scars on her face that you can hardly see, but it really works.
Yeah, that's really nice that you... What I know you said defensible space people ask about, but what other things do adults ask about, you know, as far as fire safety when they know that's your kind of work?
A lot of them actually do have defensible space questions. That's what I get the most questions about.
Okay.
Is
well, do they ask about their plants? Like some plants burn very easily, some plants don't. Some
yes.
I mean, how you can minimize the dangers by what you have around your house?
Yes. And I do get those questions a lot, and we've got a pamphlet I'd be happy to email to anybody.
Okay. Also,
Or
you
you
see
can,
right on the screen right now, you see the phone number if anybody wants to call CAL FIRE.
yes,
too,
yeah,
And it's 209-754-3831?
3831,
Okay.
yeah.
And the people, at least I know the people I've dealt with, the CAL FIRE, are nice to deal with. They're usually free with their information and ready
try
to
to-
help because it cuts down the dangers. You know, I interrupted you. You were saying.
No, that's,
But it was on the screen, so I wanted to make sure that they can contact CAL FIRE.
yeah. And burn permits are required May 1st.
May 1st.
And I believe we'll be going to burn hours of 7 p.m. to 8 a.m. And you must call every day before you start a burn pile so that you know it's a
And there's a certain size pile you can.
4 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet. You have to have 10 feet of clearance down to bare mineral soil, and somebody must be in attendance at all times, and that fire has to be dead out anytime you leave it. And remember that burn days are established on the basis of air quality, so a nice windy day that's going to allow smoke to disperse is probably going to be a burn day, but that may not be a safe day to burn, so be really careful about that.
Well, there's a number you can call for that. You can call CAL FIRE for that, or you can get the radio station normally.
Yeah,
has
the
it,
radio
like
station.
KVML or
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know the number for the Tuolumne County, but I don't have the number for Calaveras County off the top of my head.
Okay. Well,
So-
you need a lot of numbers. We're a numbers society.
Yes, we are.
Or else you want to call yourself, you can't even remember your own number.
That's right, yeah, yeah.
Boy, that's good. So you've been with CAL FIRE how long now?
Well, off and on, mostly on, but off and on since 1973.
Okay.
So
But early before that, you were lookouts?
I was a fire
Are there
lookout.
lookouts still around?
There are, yeah, they're mostly the Forest Service. Our Blue Mountain CAL FIRE lookout is staffed these days during times of high fire danger or lightning, something like that. But mostly we have the Forest Service lookouts that are still staffed.
Yeah, I wonder if members of the general public really understand the kind of the romance of the lookouts. You know, that was an interesting way to live.
It really was, yeah.
You'd cook for yourself, you'd be up there by yourself, you're scanning things, you have your living quarters and all that, and there was a certain, well, maybe the word is romance.
I think it was, yeah. Yeah, it was
So you did that for a while?
26 years.
Oh, 26.
Yeah.
Wow. You had a lot of very quiet nights.
I did, yeah. And it was an interesting life. That was what I grew up wanting to do. And it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's good.
And saw a lot of fire, or a lot of smoke.
Yeah, I used to, when my dad used to look out, and you could spot, I mean, you'd see smoke out there, and you'd see where that was with whatever they used up there.
The Osborne Firefinder.
Yeah, and you could pinpoint it and
You really
let people
could,
know or
yeah.
figure out what it was, what was causing it.
Yeah, and after a person has been on a lookout for, a while, you become very familiar with the terrain around you, and you have nothing to do all day but sit there and study maps and figure out landmarks.
Right.
And you can get really good at pinpointing a smoke.
You just forget how to talk to other people.
Sometimes, yeah.
No, it was a great life. I think
Yeah.
for the people I knew who worked in that area.
Yeah.
But they're not. They have abandoned some of the lookouts, right?
Many of the towers are no longer staffed.
Yeah.
A lot of them, the facilities are still there, the tower is still there, but they're no longer
How
in service.
are the potential fires pinpointed then?
Currently,
Yeah.
a lot of local reports,
Okay.
folks looking out, but that doesn't give you the distinct location unless somebody's, standing right beside a fire.
Yeah.
If you're looking over several hillsides, it's really difficult to tell exactly where a fire is.
Yeah.
So-
Well, then sometimes there's just a little plume, and sometimes there's a big one. You can't. I guess you could tell with your expertise what is actually burning by the color of the smoke sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
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 Oh, that's good.
But,
Well, what are some of the, before we end here, what are some other tips you can give to people that we haven't covered, just about fire safety?
Yeah.
Mostly, I guess, to be concerned about it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I just really want to emphasize this year is please, 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 everybody, do your defensible space. Clean those roofs off, get those needles raked away from your house, get the grass mowed, and then within 30 feet of your house, rake the trimmings away. You want to, the ultimate goal of defensible space is a home that could withstand a fire and come through a fire, survive a fire without firefighter protection, because there's always going to be more homes at risk, threatened during a major wildfire than there are resources to protect them.
Yeah.
And each home that needs protection is taking resources away from fighting the main fire. So
Yeah.
this fire safety not only begins at home, but it's a community affair. Everybody needs to do it. And it's not just to keep the fire department happy, it's to keep all of us safe.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? I think some people assume, oh, if there's a fire at my place, the firefighter's going to be there right away, and
Yeah.
they can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, so
there may be two fire engines for a community that's got 10,000 homes in it.
Yeah.
What are your odds? How big of a gambler are you?
Yeah.
It's much better. Defensible space is no guarantee that your home will survive, but boy, it really ups the odds that it will.
Yeah, adds the chances.
And it just makes it so much safer for everybody else in the community. So.
I know that, and it has to be very clean too. I mean, there
Yeah.
can't be amber,
Yeah.
there can't be
No.
pine needles or all
Right.
that stuff.
In that lean, clean green zone around the house, you can't have anything dead. No dead needles, leaves, dry grass. Trees need to be trimmed up. And really the only difference between the 30-foot zone and the remaining 70 feet, or to your property line, whichever's closest, is what is directly on the ground. That needle cover on the ground needs to be gone within the first 30 feet. Out beyond that, it can be no more than 3 to 4 inches deep.
Okay.
So, but
Right.
get rid of all the dead stuff on your property. Dead limbs, dead bushes,
Dead bodies.
brush.
No.
No dead bodies.
Okay, good. Nancy, it's good to see you.
Well, it's good to
and
be
maybe
here.
you come back and see us next year.
I hope so.
Because you can't. I don't think you or any of us could talk too much about fire
That's
safety,
right.
especially
So-
in this area. So
Good
we
luck
wish
to
you
all of
well
us.
in the days that you have to drive to Sacramento and back.
Yeah.
You know, you'd rather be out talking to
Yes.
homeowners, probably.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All the best. And we hope you enjoyed today's show and keep fire safety in your mind. And we'll see you next time on Calaveras Living. Thanks a lot.